Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the professor, and this is the moment of truth.
Tonight, a Dale County man says he's not through fighting, even though he's no longer facing jail time for refusing to apologize to an Ozark police officer.
WDHN was first to report that the charges were dropped against him, but that's not the end of the story. He says he still wants justice and he's getting help, more legal help. WDHN's Christian Jones is in Ozark with the details. Christian?
A Dale County man is no longer facing jail time after refusing to apologize to an Ozark police officer, but he says this fight is far from over. Skipperville native Reginald Burks says that he should have never been put in the position.
I feel like they embarrassed the heck out of me, man. I had to go through all this, and it shouldn't have never happened in the first place.
Back in December, Burks was pulled over for speeding in a 25-mile-per-hour speed zone while taking his daughter to school. According to Burks, the officer did not use a radar gun to measure his speed. Shortly after, Burks said the officer would not move from in front of his car, leading to the two having a few choice words.
I told him actually one time to move nicely. So I'm like, hey, sir, can you get the hell out the way? Get your out the way, because we can go.
When going to pay his ticket, the Dale County man found out that he was being forced to apologize to the officer.
I said, what? I'm not apologizing. I said, I just paid the ticket and gone about my business. He said, no, the judge got how to speak to you. He want to speak to you.
According to Burks' attorney, David Harrison, Judge Nicholas Bull held the lawyer's client in the courtroom for over 2 hours until Burks apologized. Bull later gave Burks the decision to apologize to the Ozark officer by June 4th or spend 30 days in jail. Harrison says that in over 30 years of work, he has never experienced anything like this and says his client did nothing wrong.
And actually, you can really say anything you want to a police officer as long as it's not fighting or inciting, violence. And that's not the case here. This man clearly said something that you hear every day. So,
after months of not budging, the Dale County Court ultimately decided to not punish Burks for refusing to apologize. While he is no longer facing jail time, Burks and Harrison are continuing to fight this case. According to Harrison, the two are fighting to gain pain and suffering compensation as well as compensation for lost wages. The lawyer says they are receiving help from the Institute for Justice, a nonprofit organization aimed to fight for civil rights cases.
They've reached out to us and we're consulting with them and making a decision on exactly what to bring. Because a lot of times when you have situations with government officials, they have immunity and it's hard to attack that immunity. Well, this organization here, that's their expertise and they're looking at ways that we can make the situation right for Mr. Burks.
Burks says that he feels that his charges were only dropped due to media backlash and to prevent Harrison and Burks from further fighting the case. Now, I have reached out to Judge Nicholas Bull for a comment, but have not received one at this time.
Look, this is Alabama. The same Alabama where the black folks tuned up those racists last year. The Riverside Reckoning, where America was introduced to its newest superhero, the chairman of Alabama. You remember how that crooked prosecutor and the judge actually put some bogus charges on the black man who those racist trash bags attacked? That black co-captain, he was the one who got beaten to the point he had to be hospitalized, and yet you had these guys turn around and say, well, after these niggers called themselves beating down these good white supremacists, we're going to put some charges on this guy. That's what they were doing there. So those inbred reprobates are still trying to get their own backs is what this shows us. They got humiliated publicly, globally humiliated. And the black folks stomped them out and they're still trying to prove that they're in charge. A black man is driving his daughter to school. What should have been just a simple, sir, you got to slow it down, which is what should have happened. Instead, they're like, oh, no. This is all about the tax base. See, whenever you catch a white person who's speeding, you let them off with a slow it down. You catch a black person, on the other hand, good. No, we got to go ahead and put some fines on you. And then you wonder how it is that we have all of these places across America where when it comes to traffic citations and fines that have to get paid, black people are disproportionately the ones who actually get hit with the tickets. It's deliberate. It is a black tax by another name. Now you got a black father with his child in the car, and you got this overbearing hayseed who's calling himself trying to prove that he's the toughest flatfoot in town. So the black man told him, look, if you're going to write me a ticket and get the hell out of the way so I can get on. I got other things to do more important than messing around with you. And they never like that. As far as they're concerned, you don't question my authority. Well, there's no question these white supremacists don't have any authority. And this is the reason why, especially after the uprisings of 2020, you got all these little red state racists passing these laws that are supposed to criminalize, quote-unquote, disrespecting the police. This is actually done strictly to try to intimidate black citizens in particular. Of course, when it comes to disrespecting the police, at the end of the day, the police have to earn respect before they can demand that they not be disrespected. And of course, if you look at these state legislatures, you also see that a number of Democrats go along with these laws. So what does that tell you? Black subjugation is based on subjecting us to a daily breaking process. The only way that you can have a group of people who are psychologically repressed is if you make sure that every single day you are attacking them. Every single day you're breaking them down. Every single day you're trying to demoralize them. Every single day these anti-black racists have to do something egregious to remind us that we're an oppressed people and that apparently they got us under control, or at the very least to remind us that they can just roll up on us at any time. You can't be safe in this society because the white supremacists are in charge. That's the point. But in order for that kind of clumsy mass mind control to even be attempted, of a necessity, you're required to enact some sort of blatant act of killing a black person, or, as in this case, some heinous act meant to humiliate a black person. Like when they forcefully cut black girls' hair, and they make sure they do that in front of everybody. If a black child, particularly a black girl, stands up in class, oh, we have got to cut any of your locks that you've got. They can be on the sports team and they'll decide, oh, we're not going to do anything or say anything until we get her out there in public at a game. So you're going to be ejected from the game unless we got to cut your hair right now. Oh, you can't go back to the locker room. We got to do this in front of everybody. That's the entire point of doing it. Or when they threaten to suspend black students when they don't stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Or, as in this case, refuse to accept payment for a traffic ticket unless a black man apologizes to the thug in blue. It should have been the cop apologizing to him, because he was the one who was out of line. But this little plan to humiliate a black man backfired, and now instead of it being a story about how a uppity Negro who refused to bow to a white man got checked, instead it's a story about how a black man cussed out a cop and then defied a judge in his own courtroom. See, those good old boys, they were trying to set a precedent, and they did. Just not the kind they wanted. And it's good to see this black man's not sitting here talking any forgiveness crap. But I hope the love of Jesus does. I'm glad that he's not doing any of that garbage. Instead, we're going to be having some lawsuits up here. And what can we do to strip qualified immunity from the judge in this case? And that's very important. There needs to be a full court press to make sure that these judges are going to be stripped of any sort of qualified immunity, just like the thugs in blue. This man showed what happens when black people have a spine and actually stand up to these criminals. But notice that it was the judge who was the main one pushing this. It was the judge who demanded, you're going to give a written apology to this guy. Written apology? Like hell. Now there ought to be holy hell raised by the State Bar Disciplinary Committee. And of course there should be officials at the statewide level who are also looking and going, this is clearly judicial overreach. You got a judge who needs to be snatched off the bench. But then again, the reason this Cletus was on the bench in the first place is because of his statewide connections. These good old boys, that's what they do. They spend a lot of time doing that. You heard about that town in Alabama, Newburn, where you have that majority black town, but thanks to some Jim Crow era efforts to circumvent the Voting Rights Act, the town mayor and the city council are basically self-appointed, white of course. Well, you had that black man, Patrick Braxton, who actually filed paperwork to actually run for office, and he won because there was nobody else on the ballot. But the racist reprobates refused to vacate the office, and you got state and county officials who are helping them out, saying that, well, it's legitimate for them to still stay in office because, well, they filed some paperwork saying that they've moved the date of the election, or as far as they're concerned, they're vacating office. That's what they did. They just said, hey, we're white and we say so. There's no case law for it. There's no state law. As far as they're concerned, this is about sending a message. We're in charge, and it's not based on elections. Mr. Braxton has, of course, gone to federal court, but recently a judge ruled on his case and refused to give this man any sort of immediate relief to his case, even though it's obvious that he's won it. Even the judge had to admit that he will likely prevail in a lawsuit, and yet said, well, we're not going to do this now. You need to wait until the next election comes along. So you got the reprobates covering for each other. By the way, that federal judge who refused to follow the law in this case was appointed to the bench by W. So let's hear it for how the Republicans aren't racist like those Democrats, right? Isn't that a popular GOP talking point? Mr. Braxton shouldn't have to be going through any of this. It's obvious what state law says, but you got these little white supremacists down there, many of them sitting on those benches going, yeah, we see what the law is, and we admit that, yeah, you're going to win. I mean, even if you don't, the problem is these guys can't sit here calling themselves changing the date of the election or changing the dates for this or that forever. Sooner or later, there's going to have to be an election. The genie's out of the bottle and we can't put it back in. But in the meanwhile, we're just going to pretend like we're still in charge for a little while longer. I've been saying for several years now that the job of crushing white supremacy will not be complete until these judges are brought to heel, right along with their thug buddies in the police and the prosecutor's office. These judges are also part of the big problem that we face, and they have to be punished for their actions. So it's good to be seeing black people and black men in particular who are standing up to these white supremacists. It goes to show us, though, just how much work is ahead of us. But nonetheless, as I've always told you, when we fight, we win. And that's the part that we have to make a habit out of. These white supremacists are not going to be toppled on their own. We're going to have to knock the scumbags over. So it's time to put the arm on those scumbags. This is just more proof that we gotta get on code, so we can have these white supremacists, especially these white supremacist judges, held accountable to our satisfaction. It's not enough merely to defeat their little illegal maneuvers. They also have to be punished. That way, the only ones who are going to be sorry is them. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Kenneth Johnson, Roxanne Allen, O&ME Family, Zell1, and Tyrone Jones. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.